All right, today you are going to learn how to cite evidence. We're going to practice. And in order to do that, we have to have a question to respond to. So if we look at the top, it says use paragraphs 1 through 4 from My Life with the Chimpanzees to answer the following question. What problems does Jane Goodall face when exploring around her camp? So when we are writing, we have to support our statements or our thinking, in this case, our response, by using details, and that is called citing evidence. When we take that evidence from a piece of text, that's called citing textual evidence. So there are two ways for us to cite. We can use direct quotations, so that's copying the author's exact words and using quotation marks, or we could paraphrase, and that's when we restate the author's words, but in our own words. Down here are some sentence starters. These are just a few sentence starters. There are many more ways to cite evidence or textual evidence, but I wanted to just give you a couple that I think are really important. All right, so what problems does Jane Goodall face when exploring around her camp? So let's jump into the text. If you remember yesterday when we annotated, I'm not going to read the entire 4 paragraphs because we actually annotated and we said that the first paragraph was talking about the setting or introducing the setting. The second 2 paragraphs talked about the setting some more. And the last paragraph was where she started to encounter some problems when she was exploring. So I really want to hone in on this last paragraph. So I'm going to reread it to refresh my memory. When camp was ready, I set off to explore. It was already late afternoon, so I could not go far. There had been a grass fire not long before, so all the vegetation of the more open ridges and peaks had burned away. This made it quite easy to move around, except that the slopes above the valley were very steep in places, and I slipped several times on the loose, gravelly soil. So I see 2 problems that she faced. She could not go far, and the second one is that she slipped several times on the loose, gravelly soil. So I have 2 pieces of evidence here, and I have to use that evidence to respond to this question. Okay, so let's start writing. And when I am responding to a question, I always want to restate part of that question. So when I start my writing piece, when I start to respond to this, I'm going to start by saying, when exploring around her camp, Jane faced several problems. So I'm using what's already here in the question to start my response. So I'll put it down here a little. When exploring around her camp, Jane experienced several problems. The first problem was that she was not able to explore far away. So let's jump back to our first piece of evidence that we looked at. She could not go far. So it was already late afternoon, so that we can infer that the sun is probably going to set really soon, and it's probably not a good idea to go and explore really, really far away in the dark. So she's saying, I could not go far because it was late in the afternoon. So the first problem is, or was that she was not able to explore far away. Unable to explore far away. All right, now I need to include that textual evidence, okay? So I'm going to start by saying, I know this because the text states, and now this is where I'm going to put my quotation mark, and now I have to go get that evidence. So let me go back. She says, I could not go far. And because I'm the one that's responding to this, I'm actually going to take out the word I. I'm going to put my own word she. So it's going to say she could not go far. So the direct quote is going to be could not go far. So the text states that she, quote, could not go far. All right, so this is straight from the text. The second problem was that she had a difficult time walking on the slope. So if we look down here, I highlighted she slipped several times on the loose gravelly soil. And if we go back a little bit, she's saying that it was quite easy to move around except the slopes were steep. And because they were steep, she was slippery. She was slipping on the loose soil. So I'm going to write the second problem is that she had a difficult time walking on the slopes. All right. Now the sentence starter I'm going to use for this is on page. So I want to show my reader, whoever's reading my response, that I know exactly where this information came from. So I'm going to go back over here to my text. So it's on page 101. So I'm going to write on page 101. Jane states that she, all right, so let's look at that. Jane states that she, so it's on page 101. The person writing is Jane, so that's why I'm saying that Jane stated that she slipped several times on the loose gravelly soil. Now, this is a lot of words, and I don't really need to use all of this in my when I'm citing the evidence. The most important thing that I need to know about this is that she slipped more than one time. So she slipped several times. So I think for my response, I'm only going to include the direct quote, slipped several times. Remember, because it's exactly what the author wrote or said, it's going to be in quotation marks. It's a direct quote. So on page 101, Jane states that she slipped several times. All right, so my response is complete. Let's go back and look at the question and read the whole response. So the question says, what problems does Jane face when exploring around her camp? When exploring around her camp, Jane experienced several problems. The first problem was that she was unable to explore far away. I know this because the text states she could not go far. The second problem was that she had a difficult time walking on the slopes. On page 101, Jane states that she slipped several times. So I have two direct quotes that support my response. And I did want to mention that, one second, that it's very important to use these quotes and to cite textual evidence anytime you are trying to make your point clear, anytime you're responding to something, because it validates and it strengthens your statement. It proves that your ideas are accurate and true anytime that you give some type of evidence. Okay, so you guys are going to be practicing how to find evidence and also how to embed it in a response by using those citing text sentence starters.